Okay, everybody, this is chapter 9, section 4. We're factoring to solve. So kind of a next step after section 3 that we did earlier. So we're going to kind of hopefully remember some of that stuff we did and move on from there. The first thing we need to take notes on is zero product property. So that's this. Okay. Anything multiplied to 0 becomes 0. So we've understood that, you know, since you've been in like second grade, that when you're multiplying anything by 0, it equals 0. Okay, so there's these notes here. You know, we don't really like to use the letters and stuff to explain things, but if we're trying to be generic, it's just saying if you have something like A times B and it equals 0, then either A or B had to have been 0 for the answer to be 0. Okay, and so we're going to kind of use that concept if we factored something. So these right here are the factors. It came from x squared minus 2x minus 3. We factored it. We used our x factoring to be able to get to these two. Okay. If you remember from section 3, we had stuff like x squared minus 4, I think was the example that equaled 0. So remember, this was a difference of perfect squares, so we factored it like this. Okay. And then we took each of those factors and set them equal to 0, and we solved each one for x. And we got 2 answers. Okay, so if you remember us doing that from the last section, we're going to do something very similar to this now. Okay, except now we're gonna use x factoring to get our factors. So like if we go back to this example here, I've got x plus 1 equals 0. I'm going to take that, set it equal to 0, and solve it for x. So I'm going to subtract 1 from each side. Get that. Then I'll repeat the process with the second factor. Okay, I'll add 3 in this case, and I'll get x is equal to 3. So remember, these are called roots. They're also known as zeros. And I also introduced the word solutions because that's also used for what we're doing. So all of those x equals -1, x equals 3 are all known by those 3 names. Okay. So remember, that's where does my parabola, because our parabola is going to come from this, or our parabola on the graph, where does the parabola cross the x-axis? So it's going to cross it at these 2 points. Okay. All right. So once again, I move kind of quickly through on video, so if I'm going too fast, you need to catch up, hit pause, get caught up on your notes, hit play, and continue on. We'll go here. So we've already factored something for you. So all we're going to do here is take these 2 things and set them equal to 0 and solve it. Okay. So just solving an equation. We're going to subtract 1 from both sides here. And we're going to divide by 4. Now, a lot of these will end up being a fraction. So you just need to understand when you're dividing a smaller number by a bigger number, it's going to end up being a fraction. Okay, and that even happens too when you divide a bigger number by a smaller number, but you know, it's always going to happen with a smaller by a bigger. Okay. Over on this one, I'm going to add 2 to both sides, and I'm going to get x is equal to 2. So I get my 2 roots, or zeros, or solutions. Okay. So why don't you go ahead and take this second one here. Once you guys write that one down, and then go ahead and do that. You could hit pause and do the work and get your answers, and then come on back and I'll have the solutions. Okay. Okay, so those are two answers. And you can leave your answers in fraction form. Just make sure you reduce it if you can. If you want to change it to a decimal, that's your choice. You can do that. Typically, I'm going to leave it as a fraction. Okay. So those are my two root zeros or solutions. Okay. All right. Now, that's what you're going to do when you're given the factors. Okay. So just set them equal to 0. Solve it for x. You've been doing that, for the last couple of years in whatever math class you're in. So it shouldn't be that tough for you to do. Now, what we're going to do though is we're going to show you a way to use your x factoring and get the answers without having to set them equal to 0 and solve them. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to factor this. There's a 1 right here. So if we remember our factoring steps to fill in the x, I'm going to go 1 times 15, and that goes on the top. Okay, my middle number 8 goes on the bottom. And the equation, these are both pluses, so these will be both pluses. Okay. So you're asking yourself what two numbers multiply to 15 add up to 8, and that's going to be 5 and 3. Okay. Now, what I would do, and I'm just going to do this off to the side. You can write it down or just kind of watch. I'd take those and make my factors, but now it equals 0. So to get x squared is x and x. I take the two numbers I have on the side, and I've got my factors. But now, because it equals 0, now we showed you that you could set them equal to 0 and solve it. Okay? And this isn't hard. It's just taking up space and time. And there's an easier way, I think, to do this. Okay, now this way I had to learn it when I was a kid. It just took a lot of paper and time to get it done. But that's what we had to do before I learned how to do this. Okay, so if you'll notice, my answers are -5, -3 for my solutions. So if I go back to my x and I look at these two numbers, the shortcut method would be, once I get those two things, change the signs. So that +5 now becomes -5. The +3 now becomes -3. And isn't that the two answers I got by doing all this other work off to the side? So I can use my big X and I get all done. And later on, when this number here becomes bigger than 1, I've got some division to do, but I'm going to do the same thing. Once I get all done, I'm going to go ahead and just change the signs, and I get my two answers. The same exact answers I get doing it this longer way. Okay, now that comes from practice, us doing it together, asking questions. It's not hard. It's just a nice way to be able to do that. Okay. All right, now let's go to this one. If you write this one down, this gets a little bit more. We take a step up from what we just did. We're trying to make sure too that you understand how these equations need to be written before you can actually do it. All of these, you might want to write this down. All these need the equations must equal 0 first before you can factor. Okay, you have to have it equal to 0 before you can factor this. Okay, so obviously this one doesn't equal 0, it equals 18. So that means I just got to move everything to the left. So I'm going to subtract 18 from both sides. And I can't take 18 away from 4x squared or -21x. Just have to move it over there, but now it becomes negative. Okay. All right, kind of a tough problem for us to start off with. We have to x factor this. First thing I'd want to do is there a GCF in that? And there's not. Okay. So I'm going to have to just kind of think here and find two numbers that are going to work. So I'm going to take got first number 4 multiplied to the back, so that gets me a negative 72. And if that number is negative, these have to be different, so I'm just going to help myself out. Middle number is negative 21. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so now I got to come up with two numbers that multiply to negative 72 but add up to negative 21. Okay, so 72 is a tough one because there's lots of combinations, okay, and for them to also add up to negative 21 is tough. So this is what we did before when factoring. I'm doing right off to the side all the factors of 72. So 1, I'm going to clean this up here for a second. 1 and 72. And if this number down here is negative, then the bigger numbers have to be negative. So sometimes help yourself out. So it's that. Does 2 go into 72? Yes, it does. It goes in 36 times. Does 3 go into 72? Yes, it does. It goes into it 34 or 24 times. Sorry. Does 4 go into it? Yes, it does. It goes into 18 times. Does 5 go in? No. Does 6 go in? Yes, it goes in 12 times. Okay, you guys can do this. Okay, does 7 go in? No, it doesn't. Does 8 go in? Yes, it does. It goes in 9 times. Does 9 go into it? Yes, I've already did it, so that means I've reached the maximum possibilities to get 72. So now I'm going back, which pair add up to negative 21? It's that. Okay, so it didn't take me very long to do that. You guys can do it. You're using your calculator. You can divide 72 by these successive numbers. It has to go in evenly. There you go. But the leading coefficient was bigger than 1. So remember, I have to go back and divide it. Okay. Now I'm only going to divide it by the leading coefficient because I don't want to write the factors out. You still need to know how to do that, but you should already know how to do it from the last chapter. Now I'm trying to get answers or solutions. I just need numbers. Okay. So can I reduce this negative 24 over 4? Yes, I can. It reduces down to negative 6. Can I reduce 3 over 4? I cannot. Okay. So now I'm going to change the signs of the factors. Okay. That's what x is going to equal. So x will now equal, I'm going to take this negative 6 and change it to positive 6. I'm going to take this negative or positive 3/4 and change it to negative 3/4. Those are my two solutions, or my roots, or my zeros. Okay. All right. So that's using the big X to get answers. I think it's a really cool way to do it. I had to do it the old-fashioned, longer way. It wasn't hard. It just took more time and more paper. So I think for you guys, it's a pretty slick way to do it. You still have to be able to write factors, so once in a while I might do that just to make sure we kind of keep up on that. So that should probably help you out, right? Okay, so this is going to take lots of practice. You know how to fill in an X, you know how to look for factors. Now what we're doing is we're creating a shortcut, and we're creating a shortcut because I feel like, if you can X factor stuff, the little shortcuts hopefully understandable and hopefully easy to do. Okay, so make sure you do lots of practice on this. If you got questions, please ask, and then hopefully we'll get everything kind of caught up. All right, take care.